The knock came from inside the house. That was the first thing Mara understood before the fear, before her mind tried to make sense of it, before the scream got stuck somewhere in her throat. She was standing on the porch, her key just inches from the lock, when it happened again. Knock. 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 It wasn't coming from the door in front of her. It was coming from the wall behind it. The whole house seemed to exhale then, a long, wooden groan, like it had been holding its breath, waiting for her to finally come home. Mara froze, every muscle tight. The street behind her was silent and empty. No cars, no nosy neighbors, peering through their blinds, not even a whisper of wind. There was just the house at the end of Briar Lane, its paint peeling like old, dead skin, and its windows as black as sealed eyes. She managed to whisper, her voice trembling, "Hello." The knocking stopped. A profound silence fell, so heavy it felt like a weight on her shoulders. Then a new sound slithered through the air. Her name. Mara. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was something far more unsettling. It sounded familiar, like someone was practicing how to say her name after years and years of silence. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She fumbled for it, and the screen lit up on its own. Nitrogen monoxide signal. And below that, one missed call. The caller ID sent a fresh wave of ice through her veins. Mara Holt. Her own number. Her fingers went numb. The phone slipped, hitting the rotting porch boards with a sickening crack. The screen spiderwebbed into 1,000 tiny fractures, but the call kept ringing, an impossibly insistent ringing from the broken phone. And now, from inside the house too, the front door creaked open, slowly, an invitation into the dark. Mara ran. She didn't remember making the decision to stop running. She only realized she had when her lungs felt like they were on fire and her legs gave out, collapsing beneath her halfway down the street. When she dared to turn back, the house was closer than it should have been. It loomed over the landscape, patient, like a predator that knows its prey will always return. Briar Lane had been condemned for years. It was a place of local legends, stories of fires and missing people, tales that were only told late at night after a few drinks had loosened everyone's tongues. Mara had sworn she would never come back here, but her mother's will had been brutally clear. The house belongs to you now. So she walked back, slowly, step by agonizing step, feeling like the house had already won. Inside, the air was just wrong. It was too warm and thick, like breathing out of someone else's mouth. Dust motes danced in thick, lazy ribbons through the slivers of light, but the floor was spotless, as if someone had just cleaned it. A single photo frame sat on the hallway table, drawing her eye. Mara stopped dead. It was a picture of her, taken that morning. She was wearing the same jacket, had the same tired look in her eyes, the same haunted expression she was wearing right now. And behind her, in the photo, barely visible in the background, was the very hallway she was standing in except in the picture. The door at the end of the hall was open. In reality, it was closed. From behind that door, something clicked. The first night, the house learned how she walked. The floorboards began to creak just before she stepped on them, anticipating her every move. The second night, it learned her routines. The bathroom light flickered on the exact moment her hand reached for the switch. The kettle shrieked to a boil just as the thought of making tea crossed her mind. By the third night, it learned her thoughts. She'd think to herself, "Don't look behind you," and would immediately feel a cold breath on the back of her neck. She'd think, "This isn't real," and the walls would seem to pulse, a slow, wet, rhythmic beat, as if a living thing were disagreeing with her. At night, the house whispered, not in words, but in memories. Her father's angry shouting, her mother's muffled crying, the faint, unmistakable sound of something heavy being dragged across the basement floor 20 years ago. The sound everyone in her family had pretended they never heard. Mara tried to leave. Of course she tried, but the front door wouldn't budge. The windows didn't show the street outside. They showed other rooms of the house, twisted and distorted. The hallway seemed to stretch, growing longer every time she tried to walk down it. Her phone, miraculously working again, showed dates that hadn't happened yet. Missed call, tomorrow. Caller ID, unknown. A new voicemail played by itself, without her touching a thing. It was her own voice. A frantic whisper. Don't trust the basement. On the fourth night, the house finally spoke clearly. You left me hungry. The voice was everywhere and nowhere at once, seeming to vibrate from the very structure around her. Mara stood in the living room, her back pressed hard against the wall, watching the ceiling sag as if it might start to drip. I was a child, she said, her voice shaking. I didn't know. The floor in front of her split open. It didn't crack or break, it opened, like a pair of dry lips pulling apart. A set of stairs descended into a blackness that smelled of iron and mold, and something sickeningly sweet beneath it all. The single bare bulb in the basement flicked on. She screamed. Her mother was standing at the bottom of the stairs, or what was left of her. She looked wrong, stretched out of shape, her joints bending in ways they shouldn't. Her smile pulled far too wide, like a mask that had been practiced for years. You always were selfish, her mother said, her voice soft and full of pity. Running away. Leaving us here. Mara shook her head, tears streaming down her face. You died. The fire. There was no fire. Her mother interrupted, her voice still impossibly gentle. Just the house. Learning. As if on cue, the walls around Mara began to bleed, dark red trickling down the faded wallpaper. And yet, she ran down the stairs anyway, because in that moment, she realized the house had learned something else. It had learned about her guilt, and it knew exactly how to use it. The basement wasn't a basement anymore. It was a vast, impossible room filled with doors, hundreds of them, stretching into the gloom. Each door was labeled with a year, and from behind each one, she could hear faint whispering. Her mother stepped aside. Go on, she said. Pick one. Her younger self sat on the bed, holding an old flip phone. The girl looked up, her eyes wide with fear and accusation. Why didn't you call for help? She asked. Mara slammed the door shut. She stumbled to another one. Dosmildosi, her father, stood there, his eyes hollow and empty, his hands blackened with soot. You heard me screaming, he said, his voice completely calm. Why didn't you come back? Door after door after door. Every version of herself that chose to run. Every terrible consequence that stayed behind. The house wasn't haunted by ghosts. It was fed by something worse. It was fed by abandonment, by silence, by secrets. It was fed by every person who ran away instead of facing what was inside. At the very end of the room was one final door. It had no year on it. Hust Mara. Her phone rang again. Caller ID. Home. She answered. Her own voice spoke from the other end. It's time to stay. The final door opened on its own. Inside was the house, but it was clean, bright, and alive. A perfect, idealized version of it. No rot, no blood, no despair. And a woman stood at the center of the living room. She looked exactly like Mara, but she was calmer, still. And she was smiling. I'm what the house makes when someone stays, the woman said. You can leave, or you can belong. Mara felt the house breathing all around her, a gentle, rhythmic pulse in the walls, waiting for her decision. She took a step forward. The door slammed shut behind her. The house on Briar Lane is still there. Old for sale signs rot on the overgrown lawn. Locals will swear that if you get close enough, you can still hear knocking coming from inside the walls. Sometimes, they say, the house will call your phone, using your own number as the caller ID. If you ever happen to pass by it late at night, you might see a woman standing in the window. She always looks like she's waiting for someone. And if you listen very, very closely, you'll realize she already knows your name. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more chills.